Welcome everybody to Bmfa Question Time Part 2. The first one was really well received and we've had tremendous feedback and a lot of requests to do it again. So here we are. Got some really interesting and discussion bringing questions. So we're going to get cracking pretty much straight away. A quick whiz round and introduce everybody on the panel. From my top, I'll work my way downwards. We've got Andy Simons, obviously Bmfa Club Support Officer. We've got Duncan McCure, Achievement Scheme Controller. We've got our Bmfa Chairman, Ian Pallister, and Dave Phipps, our CEO, and our special guest star, Tim Marshall, who is the Bmfa Insurance Brokers representative. So great to have you here, Tim. So that's the introductions for tonight. Let's get going. So question number one. This comes from Ryan Venell and Brian Lever, both asking the same questions, and we're going to ask this. We're going to ask this over to Ian. So get Ian going straight away. Are you able to share the demographic of Bmfa members, showing a trend of how this has changed over time, along with membership volumes over the same period? My question around this is to understand the Bmfa's marketing strategy to entice new members and new people to our multidiscipline sport hobby. This is both at a national and club level. What can the Bmfa do to help support clubs attract new people? So over to you, Ian.
Right, thank you, Paul, and welcome everyone. Delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you all directly. As I'm sure a lot of you know, one of our key priorities from the strategic review that we kicked off last year was to retain and grow the membership. I'm going to take that aspect first, and what I'd like to do is just share a few facts and figures with you just to put this into perspective. So if I could ask Andy just to pop up the share screen.
Can you see those? Yep.
Hopefully you can see that. You don't need to read all the detail along the bottom, but basically this shows our membership for the last 25 years or so. And as you can see, it plateaued at just around the 35,000 mark for a period of about 16 years. And it started to tail off 2 or 3 years ago, but as it stands at the moment, we're about where we were 20 or so years ago. We don't have much information going prior to that, but it's interesting when you get your next BMFA news, there'll be an article on the beginnings of the BMFA and the SMA as we lead up to our centenary. And one of the figures in there is from 1959, and that shows that in that year there were about 1,800 members in 318 clubs, which is, sorry, about 8,000 members, that was it, about 8,000 members in just over 300 clubs. So we've come a long way since then, and the significant difference and what prompted the increase in membership was when we started to offer insurance. And the recent survey that we did last year has shown that insurance is still the major thing that attracts new members. If you could just show up the next slide, please, Andy. This slide shows the demographic, and it's a two-part slide. The brown bars show our demographic from the membership system by percent, and it's broken down into age brackets. At the bottom, it's 0 to, if you can't read it, 0 to 18, 19 to 34, 35 to 44, etc. in 10-year brackets. And as you can see, we're very much skewed to the over 50s age bracket, which perhaps is not surprising, bearing in mind that a lot of us don't have the time to devote to the sport until we've retired and so on. But I think that's something that we do need to bear in mind in going forward. The blue bars show the response to the survey, and as you'll know, we had about 10,000 plus responses to the survey, which is a phenomenal response. But it's interesting that the demographic of the response to the survey is very much in line with our membership, which is a good indicator that the survey responses are a good representative sample. One other thing that the survey showed us is areas, or it gave us an indication as to areas that we might target. And if you could just put up the next one, Andy. One of the questions we asked of new members in particular is, what other interests do you have? And as you can see from this, again, the blue bars 0 to 2 years of membership, and the brown ones from 3 to 5. And the aim of this was just to see what other areas what other interests or magazines or online forums and so on can we target to identify the potential members. And it's interesting that the highest figure there is in general aviation. And certainly from our discussions with membership of the General Aviation Alliance, there are members there in their the Light Aircraft Association in particular, who are quite keen to share our engagement at some of our events. And it's quite timely because Dave Phipps, our CEO, and I are due to meet with the Air League. We've got an initial meeting with the Air League next Tuesday to explore what avenues we might pursue, perhaps to attract some of their members and broaden our engagement with the youngsters that they're looking to bring into aviation. Bearing in mind the demographic, we did a year or so ago look at targeting those coming up to retirement age, and we looked at, for example, whether advertising through the Caravan Club or Saga or those sorts of organisations might bear fruit. Sadly, the expense of advertising in their media was really put that beyond practicality. Haven't talked about education yet, and certainly that's one area that we're looking to refresh. There have been historically, I think it would be fair to say that our education program has been, it's rather has areas of local success and certain areas where we're not so successful, and certainly in the past year with the schools closed and so on, we've missed out on some of that engagement. But historically, our engagement with the younger age groups has not been very successful in pulling in membership. It's not entirely surprising. It may be that we're sowing seeds and we're going to see them in 20 or 30 years time, but at the moment that's not it's not an area where we're going to start swelling the numbers. But we've got some exciting programs in the pipeline. We're in the early stages of looking at refreshing a youth membership system and other engagements through not necessarily through STEM and school, but again that's something that we will be looking at, but particularly the offer that we can give to youngsters, perhaps a 2-tier system, one for the young future flyers, and then something to give a more substantial offer to our teenagers to try and hook them for the long term. And with the younger age group, particularly to try and engage with parents as well, so that they can, fathers and mothers can come along, perhaps to Buckminster and run some events for all of them. So that's something that we're incubating, and the executive are going to be discussing that at the weekend. But the biggest potential pool, which I think we're all aware of, is the 100,000 plus recreational drone flyers that have registered with the CAA. And again, we've got some early thoughts as to what sort of package we might be able to offer to entice more of those to join and gain the full benefits of Bmfa membership, rather than just seeking out the cheapest insurance. And looking at the second part of the question, which I think is what came from Brian Lever, and that's what can we do at club level. If you could just pop up the last slide I've got there, please, Andy. I think the important thing to note here is that there's no one size fits all. This slide just shows a profile of our clubs taken from the database, and as you can see, there are about 39 or so clubs that are over 100 with 100 members. Along the bottom line there, you've got membership in blocks of 10, so it's 100 plus, 90 plus, 80 plus, and so on. but by far the largest number of clubs are in the sort of 10 to 40 bracket. And in fact, 3/4 of our members are all in clubs of under 50. So we can't really set a percentage figure that all clubs should seek to increase their numbers by. And again, it's regional, because some clubs have waiting lists for new members, and others are crying out for new members. So I think that's something that we do need to look at. And the areas are very much attuned to that now. The areas council have got a very active subcommittee working, looking at what could the areas do to be more effective and to engage better with their clubs, and not only with clubs but also with country members that live within that particular area. So I think that's quite an exciting prospect, and the areas council are well on the way to moving that forward. I think that's probably all I want to say on that at this juncture, unless anyone else on the panel has anything they'd like to add.
I think in terms of assisting clubs, I think our role is to perhaps provide the tools for the clubs to promote their activities, and because we have to recognise that not all clubs are looking for new members. There's quite a lot with a full membership role or restricted to how many members they can have. But those that are looking, we provide them with an online presence, various things such as Flight Fest that we can help them promote, which definitely has a proven track record at pulling new blood in. I think the best thing we can do to get new members is get people actually having to go flying something.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to question number 2 then. And this one will be aimed towards Andy and also the rest of the panel. And it comes from Ray Cox. Is it time for the BMFA news to be online only? And we've also got a further supplementary question along a similar line from Mick Walker. Can the BMFA please include a regular section in the BMFA news for members whose main interest is flying multi-rotors, to target, enthuse and welcome those like Ray that are new to the hobby, having joined as a result of the new flying regulations? Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think before we actually answer the question, it's probably quite useful to share the results of the survey that we did, because it is very much a question that I think a number of us in the office, and I know the executive and council, have considered. And it was, I think, important for us to have the members' views on the BMFA news rather than us just making a decision. And when I say the members' views, I don't mean, this has been a bit of a hot topic this week in various places online and on Facebook.
It is every month.
Well,
every issue.
Month, yeah. And you'll get a small handful of people, making statements that they are inferring is the will of the membership. So, we wanted to find out exactly what the will of the membership was, which was why there was a good number of questions on the BMFA news in the survey. So just some sort of interesting figures from that. First of all, in terms of people actually using the BMFA news, 81% of respondents indicated that it was one of the primary methods they used to find out about BMFA activities, news and regulation updates. And 73% indicated that they want to continue to use it for that. So there is a definite demand for the magazine. In terms of who reads it, because this is another classic one that we will see on social media, where there seems to be a trend or a fashion for people to say, well, it goes straight in the bin. Again, it was a very interesting response, and in some ways a little bit surprising, I thought, but 74% read it all cover to cover, or most of it, and only 4% said they generally do not bother to read it. So you can easily get the wrong impression by looking at social media for these things. So going on from there, the most popular articles in there, perhaps unsurprisingly, relate to the regulation changes. especially over, with the past couple of years. And it's one of the things we're very keen on, to make sure we use all available mediums to get this news out to members, one way or another. And the magazine does help, because we can pretty much guarantee it lands on everybody's doorstep. So to the actual question that Ray asked, as it happens, according to the survey, only 10% of respondents are saying it should be online only. There's a large majority who want to keep the printed version. And there are some benefits to that. Surprisingly, it only costs per issue to your door 75 pence approximately, which when you consider things like the recent issue, which had the guidance for the Article 16 in full in, I think represents excellent value for money, because we couldn't have printed that out and put it in an envelope and posted it to you for 75p. Yet we can include it in a magazine and you get everything else with it. And there are a number of occasions during the year where we have information that we need to get out to all members. And the most reliable way of doing that is hard copy through the post. So certainly my view is that at the moment it isn't time for the Bmfa news to be online only.
On the basis that it only costs us about 10 pence more than the second class stamp.
Yes, indeed. So it's phenomenal value for money. Especially when you compare it to the price of other magazines. Now I'm a techie guy, as most people that know me know, and I am into my gadgets. I read books on my Kindle, but magazines, I prefer a hard copy that I dip in and out to, and that's my personal opinion. Everybody else obviously may have a different opinion on that, and I know that some will prefer to read them purely in electronic format. And of course, they can read it in electronic format if they wish. They just go onto the website and click on the link and it's there. So as I say, in answer to the question, at the moment, we don't believe it's the right time to be online only. From Mick's question, who was asking about the irregular section for multi-rotor flyers. Yes, definitely. We are working on it. What we have to remember is that the articles in the magazine are all submitted by members. There isn't a team of writers. Myself, Development Officer Manny and Dave are putting regular articles in there as staff. But the bulk of the the bulk of the articles are submitted by members. But I do happen to know we've got an article in the next issue, which will be over 2 issues. I believe it's a 2-parter, specifically on multi-rotors and aerial photography. And we want to keep those articles coming. So, Mick, if you're out there, send one in.
We have got a couple of columnists have signed up for sort of repeat issues. So Chris Bradbury is going to continue submitting articles, I believe. And there's another guy whose name escapes me who is also going to be submitting regular articles. So there will be regular content from this point forward, hopefully.
There's an interesting comment there from Joe Barker that is put in there. It says, what about an opt-out and saving of £4 for those that want online only? Your issue there is the other bits of information that we need to send you, which we have to send in hard copy. And you may well find that it costs you more on the basis we can send the magazine out at 75p an issue, but we can't send a piece of A4 paper in an envelope out for you for 75 pence. So you may not actually be any savings by having an opt-out.
The experience of some of our sister associations as well, like I think the Hang Gliding and Paragliding Association, was when they've experimented with electronic communications and electronic magazines. The number of people that have actually looked at them is far less than the number that we're coming back on the surveys having read the Bmfa news. You know, the uptake of people actually clicking on it and reading it was something like 9%, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Just going on to, I see there's a question from Mike's son, as in where to find the Bmfa news online. If you go to the Bmfa homepage and there is a picture of the Bmfa news, click on that picture and it will take you there, and you'll also get back copies or back issues of the magazine. So I know none of us can go on holiday at the moment, or you know, if you want to read them at home or whatever, it's all there. So it's really easy to find. Okay, question number 3, and this one will go to Dave along with the rest of the panel, and it's from Philip Goff. And Philip asks, on reading the latest BMFA news, it appears that the BMFA will be taking over the show event exemptions from the CAA. Have I understood that correctly? Over the last 18 years, I have had a good relationship with the CAA on the advice of the CAA representative when charges were being brought in for the issue of an SRG 1308. I was told to operate with an SRG 1308 non-public. So my question is, will the BMFA be offering anything like that? Plus, my agreement with the Norfolk Gliding Club is that a NOTAM must be issued. Will the CAA still be handling the NOTAM part? Over to you, Dave.
Okay, so yes, I mean, the CAA sort of sprung this on us a little, in that they're wanting to change the arrangements. So previously, you know, there were sort of 2 elements to it. One was applying for authorization to hold the display, but the other was permission to operate aircraft, certainly heavier aircraft, above 400 foot. Essentially, the CAA are wanting to pass that book to us. So we'll be coming up with a comparable process, and they're going to be amending the association's Article 16 authorizations to remove the 25 kilo weight limit. So it's going to be a case that it will remain as it is for, you know, the terms and conditions for aircraft below 7.5 kilos, but we'll be able to authorize under certain conditions the operation of heavier, larger models above 400 foot. And that will include public displays and sort of routine operations like sites where they operate aero tow events. So there's still a little bit of work to be done on this, but we'll be offering it'll probably be an online system that I'll be working on with Andy to make it as easy as possible. But it will be an alternative to the CAA's SRG 1308, and there will still be a requirement for a NOTAM to be issued. So when we authorize it, I suspect the mechanism will be that we notify the CAA for the issuing of a NOTAM. So that will still remain the case. There's also a facility for sites where there's sort of regular operation of heavier aircraft to get listed in the AIP, and ultimately the information on there is hopefully going to go on the aviation charts, but that's a slightly longer term process. The CAA said it's a slightly longer term process, but it's been ongoing for probably the last 8 years that I'm aware of. So all of this is going to be detailed in CAP 722F, which will be the replacement for CAP 658, which hopefully will be published very soon. But we're aware that there are people chomping at the bit to get authorizations in place. And you know, hopefully the CAA are going to come back to us in the next day or two, because you know we don't want to hold anybody up. Yeah, I've lost my thread on it. There was something else I was going to throw in that just came to mind, but
I wasn't sure if you when you were still going there, Dave. Sorry.
What about the NOTAM situation? Are they still going to be issued in the same manner?
Yes.
So Phil would have to contact the CAA as normal for those?
No, as far as I can see from the last thing that I read, it's going to be part of the process. So when we authorize it, we will notify them that we've authorized it and a NOTAM will be required.
Will be issued. Yeah.
It will be issued.
Excellent.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thanks for that, Dave. Next question, number 4, and this goes to Duncan and Andy, and from a member called Chuck Glider. aka Harjinder. How can a country BMFA member study for and take the RC Achievement Scheme test without having to join a club? Over to you, gentlemen.
I think well, to Duncan first as the scheme controller.
Absolutely. Well, the most important thing here is there's no restriction in terms of not being in a club and access to achievement scheme tests. So the agenda can access all of the achievement scheme documentation, all the guidance documents, all the videos. They're all available on the BMFA website. So they'd be my starting point, where if I was I wanted to take one of the achievement scheme tests, first thing I would do, and the thing I would recommend, is go and look at the guidance documents. And if we've produced a supporting video for the guidance documents, have a look through that as well. The only slightly technical issue in terms of if you're a country member and you're not a member of a club is in terms of making contact with an examiner. So the two ways or several ways of doing that. First off, you could try and contact a local club to find out if they have an examiner available and if he'd be willing to take you through a test, which it should be. Or alternatively, you could make contact, again, contact details on the website with the local achievement scheme coordinator, who could again put you in contact with an examiner, maybe an area chief or one of the club examiners within the area. So the bottom line is there is no restriction to access to country members. The only slight complication perhaps is making contact with an examiner. But all the information's out there on the website. So are all the contact details for myself, for Andy, for other members of the Achievement Scheme Review Committee. So and we'll do our best to help country members through the process. Have I missed anything, Andy? Is there anything?
You have indeed, yes.
Oh, go on then.
Yeah. The other thing to look out for is local achievement scheme events that take place. The areas are looking to arrange more testing days and coaching days. We hold regular events at Buckminster for these. So, you know, two-day events where you can come up. We've got instructors and examiners on hand who can give you the guidance that you need and, help you along the way. And we'll probably discuss it a little bit later. We are working on the processes for areas to communicate much better with country members, because it has been something that's lacking, but I think we may get to talk about that a little bit later. So do keep an eye on the Achievement Scheme website, which is in the process of being overhauled. And probably within the next month or so, there may even be an accompanying app, so you could get notifications of any of these events as they're popping up. So keep an eye out for news on that in the next month or so. Okay.
Yeah, because the Buckminster events have been so popular, but the problem there is, of course, it's not always convenient for people because it might be a long journey. So that's, as Andy quite rightly points out, we're encouraging areas to organise similar events, to pick a location within their area where they can almost operate like a regional centre and offer the same sort of things that we've been offering at Buckminster. So it's I wouldn't say exciting times, but a useful development, I think.
Definitely.
Excellent. Thanks, gentlemen, for the comprehensive answer there. Okay, question number 5, and this comes from Ron Watner, and this goes to Tim, along with the rest of the panel. Do the BMFA insurers do loss or damage or risks insurance for drones, or just a liability, or just the liability side? Over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Paul. So as it stands at the moment, the covers that we've got in place is just restricted to the liability side of things. I think that people may be aware that at last renewal, we changed insurers from MS Amblin to Hiscox. Part of the reason we did that was that we were aware that Hiscox are one of the main insurers for a drone scheme that's predominantly aimed at commercial drone flyers rather than domestic drone flyers or leisure drone flyers. So it's something that Hiscox are prepared to do, the actual damage to drones themselves. There is actually a little bit of a conflict there. because one of the things that they said to us right at the outset was that they weren't interested in providing cover for damage to drones. But it's something that myself and Dave have had some discussions with Hiscox about.
Only today?
Earlier today, yeah, on a rather surprising call for Dave. But yeah, so it's something that we've had a discussion with them about, and it's something that we're exploring at the moment. I think there is an element of difficulty for us to provide cover for drones for members. The way that the scheme facility is set up at the moment, it's really in effect set up on the basis of one price for all members, and we don't have any differentiations in cover. I think if we start then adding cover in for drones with different values and different options, it creates an element of complexity that Hiscox probably feel is a little bit more complex than they would want, given the sort of level of insurance premium involved and the potential uptake. But it's certainly something that is on the cards for us to have a discussion with Hiscox, and it's something that we will continue to explore.
We did actually put a scheme in place a few years back, didn't we? Which we made available for clubs and for members. And the take-up with members was relatively low. Well, to the extent that the premiums didn't sustain the payouts. And I may have to be careful when I say, because there are some amusing anecdotes associated with it. Hopefully none of those involved are listening, but we did get quite a few claims relating to loss or damage of drones, including one which, I don't know why, but Manny thought that it was a little bit suspicious. So we asked for the drone to be returned to us. And I think the story was that it had been knocked off a balcony. It wasn't in use, it had been knocked off a balcony and sustained some damage. On inspection, we opened the case, and as we were rummaging through it, we found a micro SD card from the camera, which we had a look at the contents, and it didn't capture the crash, but it captured the owner discussing the fact that it had sustained some damage. He couldn't claim it under warranty because they'd see that he straightened it with his pliers, and they were discussing other alternatives, such as taking out an insurance policy to claim against. So ultimately, there was no payout on that particular one. But we had quite a few, and in the end, there were £700 or £800 aircraft each time, and the level of premiums that we were getting for the policy, it just didn't stack up.
I think the difficulty we have is there's two aspects. With the commercial drones, are actually covered whilst being flown, as well as all risk cover whilst within the home or transport to or from wherever you're flying. And I think that, and that also covers possibly the loss of a drone. I think we've had one of those recently where somebody questioned whether that was covered. So basically where it's just gone out of sight and not been able to trace it, rather than just damage where it's actually fallen out of the sky as such. I don't think insurers were overly keen on providing that necessarily on model aircraft. It was more a case of where somebody's struggling to insure a model aircraft within the home as part of their household insurance. That's what we provided previously in the past, but the uptake on that was fairly restricted, and unfortunately, as a consequence of that, it became not cost effective for the insurer to continue to do it. So I think it's one of those things, it only works, it's like buying the liability insurance, it only works when you get to a certain critical mass from the point of view of the uptake by members.
Yeah, apologies if I was slightly distracted. My daughter's just walked in from uni unexpectedly.
Is she joining the panel, Dave?
I doubt it.
Okay, thanks for that answer, Tim. Okay, let's move on to question number 6, and this one comes from Charlie Holford, and is aimed at Andy along with the rest of the panel. The recent membership survey highlighted a lack of area regional awareness and activity. Has the panel any suggestions as to how this possible resource could be restructured? And there's a supplementary question that goes alongside this from Richard Sharman, and that is: country members do not belong to any clubs and thus are underrepresented. can they be automatically made members of their area? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yes, an interesting question, this, and it's actually a very timely question. There is a subcommittee of the Areas Council that are having regular meetings at the moment, which I'm joining in with. I do have perhaps a unique perspective on this, as I think I'm the only person in the association that has seen this from both sides. I was the Northern Area Secretary, Northern Area Delegate and Achievement Scheme Coordinator for a good number of years. And of course, now I'm a paid member of staff, so I've sort of got quite a unique perspective on this. And I think the area system, and more importantly, I think the members that get involved at the area level is a fantastic resource that we have, that we are perhaps not making the best use of. And we need to make a much better use of that. And I think the reason being a lack of focus, perhaps. The area's constitution is quite old, and it was perhaps based more on, if we go back 40, 50 years, where area centralised competitions were a much bigger thing. Now it's more, the majority of members within the areas now are recreational flying. And not competitive flying. So I think what they're looking at the moment is refocusing on what areas should be doing and redefining the purpose of them and how they do it. And I have to say, we've had a couple of meetings this past couple of weeks that have been very, very positive. I'm sort of very enthusiastic that going forward, they're going to become an awful lot more visible. Part of that is because we have much better communication methods now. And within that, which perhaps touches a little bit on points that Richard's made about country members, we can now start to bring them in through communication methods, whereas previously it was very difficult. The communication line was from the office, or from full council to the area and then out to club secretaries. But we're in a much better position now where we can communicate with everybody. So I think in the coming months, expect to see a lot more of your areas. And they're aiming to support clubs, help clubs promote their activities, help with things like encouraging more family-friendly environment at clubs. Now we know some of that is difficult where they haven't got facilities, especially toilet facilities. It's probably in some respects a bit easier for us chaps to cope with the field without facilities than it is for the ladies. So if we can get a more family friendly atmosphere, hopefully we can start attracting more female members, more because it can be a very enthralling family activity. So anything we can do to make clubs more family friendly would be good. And areas are going to focus on that as part of their reimagining of what they should be doing. So keep an eye out. I think you'll find that you'll hear a lot more from them in coming months. Okay.
And that's a good summary, Andy.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. Duncan is an area delegate at the moment, aren't you, for South Midland area?
Yeah.
In terms of family-friendly clubs, it's something that they seem to do quite well in places like Germany, France, and Australia. People go for the day and take the family, but they have good facilities for them.
Yeah,
whilst they're there.
Yeah, certainly in my experience, the clubs that have visited, the more family-friendly ones, it is down to the facilities available and having toilet facilities and perhaps a kitchen available. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. We'll move on to question number 7. And this one is aimed at Dave, along with the rest of the panel. It comes from Keith Chant with a very similar question from Gary Manuel. It now seems mandatory to notify the CEA if one has a model fly away. What is the definition of a fly away? Does just going out of sight, crashing into nearby trees, or crops are not being found quickly constitutes a notable event. Can we use common sense in this instance, where we hear the crash, or should we notify? Over to you, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to persuade that common sense should apply. As it stands, our Article 16 authorisation does make it a requirement to report instances of flights which go beyond visual line of sight of the remote pilot. But we're working on the reporting system at present. Andy's been doing some work on the online system today. We've clarified some of the requirements with the AIB today, and that's ongoing. And hopefully we'll be clarifying the requirements with the CA in the next couple of days. But certainly we hope to have the reporting system up and running by early next week, ready for the return to flying. Hopefully there'll be no requirement to use it because everyone will be flying safely and there'll be no incidents to report. But yeah, so hopefully some common sense will prevail.
And what we're aiming for in terms of the online reporting is currently there's, or the first stages of it, that there are a series of questions, up to 8, depending on how you answer the first ones. And then once you've answered those questions and you submit your answers, you will then be guided in terms of what steps you need to take. So if it's a definite reporting to the AAIB, that will mean that there's also a report to the CAA to do. And potentially, if it involves injury to persons or damage to aircraft, there's also a report for the insurers to do. So we're aiming, we have this filtering process on there, which will then guide you through what you will need to do, who to report to basically take, and I don't mean this unkindly in any way, to take as much of the thinking out of it as possible. And we should also have online more guidance on the occurrence reporting on the website, possibly as early as tomorrow.
I've been writing the section for the new handbook over the last couple of days, so hopefully that'll be available tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Lovely. Thanks, gentlemen. Question number 8, and this one comes from Charlie Lee, and this is aimed at myself, along with the rest of the panel. And Charlie asks, what platforms do the BMFA use to advertise their services and hence promote all disciplines of model flying? The simple answer to that is quite a lot, and a very varied selection. Many, or rather all, carefully chosen to have the most amount of impact, without putting undue burden onto the BMFA pocket, should it be. We utilise pretty much most, or rather all, online platforms that are suitable for our membership. Everything from websites, social media channels. Lockdown has proven that the webinars and Zoom, like we're doing, and the in the air tonight webinars, have proved very successful, and that in turn has really driven forward our YouTube channel. So there's been a lot of growth on those platforms, and all of those do hit our target demographic very well. We try and make use of TV and radio where possible. Obviously, they're much more difficult mediums to get on board, but if we have a major event going on, or we have a new world record or anything like that, whether it's local or national TV and radio, they're all informed on it. Sometimes we hear nothing, sometimes we get some publicity from it. That's always a very difficult medium to get hold of and quantify, but they're always explored at all times. Hard copy, we circulate adverts within most of the model hard copy sort of commercial magazines. We've really grown our trade partners relationships, and so the knock-on effect is obviously we help support them where we can to advertise them, and in turn that works for us. And that also knocks back to their social channels and YouTube and things like that. It's very much a partnership that's growing continuously. As Ian mentioned back in question one, we're certainly always looking at ways to explore new avenues. And as an example, the survey threw up, as you saw, different areas that a lot of our members also enjoy. So if they do that, it stands to reason that like-minded individuals will also be doing exactly the same thing. So there's things like that that are now to further explore. Going back also to what Ian said with hard copy advertising with other associations, like we mentioned the Caravanning Club and things like that. To give some sort of perspective onto that, the actual media packs that they sent over, which we know can always be a little bit generous, should it say, but the reach on the magazines of those sort of types were between 50 to 100,000 circulation of their particular magazines per issue. And costs varied from anything from sort of £7,000 up to £15,000, depending on the advert and the publication. So as you can see, it was quite a sizable investment if we went down an advertising campaign with those sort of mediums. With sizable reach for hard copy circulation. But if we just look at one of our online platforms as an example, and we take our Facebook, the official page, over the past 28 days, that has had a reach of over 2.6 million people and has engaged with 401,000 of them. And of course, that's cost us absolutely nothing other than our time to actually manage it. So you can see the comparisons between utilising our resources to our very best possible, in the very best possible way that we can. As Andy has also pointed out, communication is getting better literally by the week, by the month, whether it's on email, whether it's website, as Andy pointed to. Development of an app is underway. So there's lots in the pipeline, as well as a lot of ground that we've already covered. That's not to say that there aren't new things coming along and ways we can utilise as we learn more, and we learn more about our demographic, which the survey has helped tremendously with. So I hope that answers your question there, Charlie. Anybody else on the panel like to add to that?
I think we should recognise the significant impact you've made on this, though, Paul, because when you took over our PR activities, I think the Facebook reach was something like 3,000.
Yeah, it probably wasn't even as high as that at the time, but yeah, we're now punching it into the millions, and the sort of growth rate we're getting there. If we can keep it going within the sort of next 12 months or so, I would like to think the Bmfa will have the largest sort of social media online presence of any model flying association in the world. That's certainly my ambition with it. I have no intention of taking second place to anybody. So yeah, and if we can take that sort of approach on all platforms, hopefully the rewards will come with it.
I think talking about radio and TV, I think Paul's covered how difficult it is for any national coverage. We get the occasional bits that we see on things like Country File and what have you. But where there's more opportunities is local TV and local radio. So if the club is got some activity, especially if it's a little bit wider than just model flying, perhaps you're doing a charity event or something like that, that you have real scope then to get local radio stations and local TV stations along. We did see at some of the Flight Fest events, we had local radio stations. I think one of the clubs in Lincolnshire had the local TV station on, so they were on for that. So there is opportunities there. Some of those are at more local levels, localized, and perhaps it's another aspect that the revitalized areas can work on the sort of more local coverage.
Okay, Thanks, Andy. I think the only thing further I'd like to add to that is we can talk about these figures being in the millions and the areas doing it there, but again, it goes back to, like myself, I've reintroduced my father back into the pastime, as well as tried with my own children. So I've certainly ticked the box of bringing a further new member in. But if we can just get 1,000 members of our sort of 30,000 membership, if just 1,000 of them can introduce one person into the sport each year, that ticks our box. Yeah, if we can combine this effort with which, as Andy says, a revitalised area programme, things going on at club level. With things like Flight Fest and trial flights and family initiatives and everything, it's working together. That's quite clear to me when I come on board. We've got to work together with this. No one single element is gonna tick all of the boxes and make the big difference. It's working together, all of us, and it's exciting to see all of these new initiatives coming together from all the different areas. Whether it literally be the areas, or whether it be education, or whether it be through communication, or whether it be new insurance packages that are being explored, and all of these things, they're all additional benefits to the memberships that make it all part of a better sport to be a part of. Okay, moving on to question number 9 then. And this one is from Barry Gregory, and it's for Dave, along with the rest of the panel. Our Article 16 authorisation appears not to be entirely consistent with the most recent version of the CAA, the Drone and Model Aircraft Code, last updated in February 2021. For example, point 4 of the CAA code still quotes 50 metres as the closest distance to people, whereas, as I understand it, or rather as Barry understands it, our Article 16 authorisation allows 30 metres. Which document, the CAA code or the Article 16 authorisation, takes precedence? Over to you, Dave.
Okay, well, the CAA's Drone and Model Aircraft Code relates to the requirements if you're operating a model aircraft under the terms of the open category of CAP 722. So, the information that's in there would apply to you as a BMFA member if we hadn't got an Article 16 authorisation. The whole point of getting the Article 16 authorisation was it provided our members with more favourable terms than those that would otherwise be available in the open category. So as a BMFA member, it's the Article 16 authorisation that you should be following. You don't really need to be concerned over what's in CAP 722.
Okay.
Essentially, the Article 16 authorisation, which Dave has done a fantastic job in sort of negotiating over the past 5-6 years, or however long it's been, essentially allows us to carry on as we pretty much always have. There are a few minor extra requirements in there, and of course we've got the registration to do now, but I mean realistically that's not a massive hurdle. But essentially we can do what we've always been able to do, and we still remain relatively lightly regulated, but that's
and the encouraging thing as well is that the CAA are wanting to delegate more powers for like regulating the displays and over 400 foot permissions. So it's not something that's being tightened and increasingly restricted. They are giving some back, and hopefully we can continue in that way.
Yep.
And it's not a fixed thing. So, we got the Article 16 authorisation in December on the basis that it was an annual renewal, but we'll be getting a new one in the next week or two, hopefully. So, it's a fairly dynamic and evolving situation, and moving in the right direction, I would say.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Dave. Question number 10. And this one is from Roger Marples, and this one goes to Tim, as well as the rest of the panel. Model flying has been severely depressed this year, lowering our insurers' risk. Will our charge reduce this year? Over to you, Tim.
Okay, well, this was a question that came up in the last discussion that we had, and I think realistically the answer to it probably hasn't changed either. So I think that perhaps a way to look at this is that the insurers don't rate the premium based upon, not like car insurance, the number of miles you do or the exposure as such. The way that they look at it is there'll be some members who fly weekly, there'll be some members who fly monthly, there'll be some flyers who fly multidisciplines. They don't really, in effect, take any of that into consideration. What they do take into consideration is the overall risk and exposure for the BMFA as an association. I think probably, well, it is actually driven by the claims experience. It's not necessarily driven by the number of flying hours. So, you know, what we have done is we've tried to ensure that the premium level that's set by insurers is something that's fair and equitable, but something that is actually at a level where it's maintainable over a period of time. What we've tried not to do is to try and force the insurance premium down to a level where, you know, if we do get claims come in, where the premium will, you know, go up quite significantly in future years. So I think going back and asking insurers to reduce premiums would be difficult. The other aspect of it is that the insurances that you get provided aren't just restricted to the liability cover for flying model aircraft. Sorry, the other aspect I was going to say is that, you know, we are all hopeful that in the next couple of months that, you know, we will be able to have a bit more of an opening of what we're actually able to do, and hopefully that will mean that people can fly. Our experience, certainly from a claims point of view, is that the majority of claims come in between probably the spring and October. And I'm hopeful that, you know, over the course of the next couple of months, people are going to be able to get back to flying and flying more frequently. But the other bit that we mentioned last time is that you're not just buying the public liability cover, you're also getting some other covers in there, including the personal accident cover. And our experience with the personal accident cover is that people have generally tended to incur injuries, perhaps at home, whilst testing aircraft, whilst preparing aircraft rather than flying. We've tended to have quite a lot of claims for people where there've significant injuries to fingers, etc., as a consequence of preparing planes or testing planes at home. And I imagine that still to a degree is going on, even though people can't fly things. So, you know, it is made up of a combination of things. It isn't just a case of pure and simply the liability cover that is costing things. So, in answer to a question, no, I don't think any reduced exposure would result in any reduction in the insurance premiums.
I suppose one additional thing to that, though, Tim, is if there is reduced flying and reduced incidents, and therefore reduced payouts, ultimately it may help us secure less of an increase or level terms for next time around.
Yeah, one of the things that we've always been quite lucky with is the low claims rebate that's been paid year on year. I think in all of the years where I've been involved with the BMFA, I think there's only been one year where insurers have not paid that in full. So it is something that we generally tend to hope that insurers will pay. But I think the significant thing to bear in mind is that, you know, I think that year when we had that, it was quite a significant claim where a member of the public riding a ride-on mower in the back garden was hit by a plane and suffered quite a severe injury to their leg, where I think the claim payment reserve was something in excess of £150,000. So, you know, model aircraft, you know, just by the nature of what they are, can do quite a bit of damage if they do hit somebody. So, yeah, it is down to the claims experience. If there's less flying and less injuries or less claims, it certainly helps with the low claims rebate. And as you say, going forward, will hopefully help with the future premiums. But there is always that exposure there, whether you're flying once a year or 100 times a year.
I think there's always a significant number of the claims every year that don't actually relate to flying as well, isn't there?
There is.
You know, we've got, I think we've had one in the past where, in fact, I think Manny mentioned it at the last question time, where the battery charging went wrong, which led to a house fire, which spread to the neighbours. And the neighbours were covered under the members' insurance, the liability insurance. So that can happen whether we're out flying or not. And the other aspect of the insurance that there's usually a claim or two every year on relates to legal matters, potential legal cover at clubs or for members as well. And that can be completely unrelated to flying activity. So they're always in place. So I think it's worth mentioning.
They've been some of the biggest claims we've had in recent years.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's not just about the flying, and I think that's very important to remember that.
I think the other thing to bear in mind, and it's something that perhaps a lot of members don't understand, is that it's not just one policy. What Tim and Dave put together on our behalf is actually a portfolio of policies that cover all the various aspects. And we only see the one premium that we pay as part of our membership fee, but it's actually a quite a complex process that's gone through every year. And to rebate one element of it would be very difficult. Yeah, I see there's a question popped up there. Someone's asked, can I claim on the insurance if my car gets hit by a control line stunter when the pilot wanders from the centre circle? And the second part of the question is, what if I was the idiot flying it?
I think the answer is yes and no, isn't it, Tim?
Yes and no.
Yeah, you can't make a claim against yourself, can you? Because you haven't got a third party.
Yeah, it's a third party cover. It's legal liability for bodily injury to third party. Sorry, bodily injury to third parties or damage to third party property.
We have had a husband claim against a wife.
We have. Well, we've had more than that, haven't we? Because we've had we've had other family members claim as well. It's one another. But one of the benefits you do get from the policy, you've got member-to-member cover. So, if a lot of insurance policies would exclude member-to-member cover, whereas with the BMFA policy, their liability policy does provide cover if somebody flying a plane injures another member.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Where are we? Moving on. Question 11. I was listening to the replies to the insurance cover, and I lost my place then. Okay, question 11, and this is from Dennis Pennington, and again this goes to Andy. Does the BMFA recommend that all clubs carry out a model flying safety risk assessment regardless of the site location?
There's a short answer and a long answer, and the short answer is yes. Obviously, almost obviously, However, you've probably already done it. If you have your site rules, you must have done a risk assessment to arrive at those, but it may not have been a formal risk assessment. I've done a fair amount with risk assessments this past 6 to 12 months. They do tend to scare people, risk assessments. They think it's a big formal process and it is challenging, and it isn't. You do them hundreds of times every day. I crossed the road earlier to go to the shop. I did a risk assessment before I crossed the road so I didn't get run over, but I didn't write it down. But I would recommend all clubs do a risk assessment and revisit it every year, because it's not difficult. With plenty of guidance on the website for it, but you may just pick something up that improves the safety at your club, and why wouldn't you do that? So I would recommend yes, but you'll probably find you've already done one.
Like if you're flying a control line stunter in a breeze, don't park your car too close.
Yes.
We've established an enviable record over the last century, and it's something that we would like to try and retain for the next century.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just add something there? I think one of the things that we need to bear in mind is if there are any near misses, I think that's a very good time to start looking at redoing a risk assessment as well. So I think if you get any near misses in, whether or not that's something that you would like to assist clubs with as regards how they can reassess the risk and how to go about that. So certainly, I think that if anybody from the the likes of the CAA or the Air Accident Investigation Branch came in and reviewed anything, one of the things they would have expected you to do was to do a risk assessment after a near miss.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, we're always learning, and when it comes to risk, if something's happened, you need to investigate what's happened and review things accordingly. Can you learn from an incident? Can you prevent it happening again? Which is a lot of what the mandatory occurrence reporting that we were talking about earlier is about. It's not really about seeking blame, you know, seeking to lay blame at people. It is to learn from the experience. And, you know, so that's all tied in with the risk assessment. So Ray Cox has put a question in the chat about them there. Says, do we see the insurers insisting on clubs doing risk assessments?
No, I don't see that as being something that I think the claims experience for the Bmfa overall is such at the moment where that isn't something that insurers would insist upon. I think the insurers are fairly reliant on the Bmfa with the handbook, etc., controlling what you guys do and on what you see as being sensible and equitable for what you're actually doing at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Proportionate is the word that we always use.
Proportionate, sorry, rather than equitable.
And I go back to saying what I said a little bit earlier. You know, if you have a club and you've got operating procedures in place, you have done a risk assessment because there's no other way of arriving at your operating procedures. So that was a short answer.
Okay, we'll move on to question 12 then. And this is from Philip Howell. And goes to Duncan, and it is, as the Bmfa A certificate member, can I fly my 2 kg fixed wing model Radian over 400 feet high? And if so, how high can I fly it?
You want the short answer? Well, there's several interesting aspects to this. First and most important thing, whether you have an A certificate or a B certificate or whatever is actually irrelevant in this particular circumstance. But if your particular model, the Radian, under 7.5 kilos, so yes, you can fly higher than 400 feet because it's not a rotorcraft with more than one lift generating propeller. It's not an automated aircraft. The most important thing is you can only go above 400 feet if you're not in a flight restriction zone. So the answer is yes, you can go above 400 feet because the model's under 7.5 kilos. But how high can you fly? You can't fly beyond visual line of sight. So that's the short answer to that one.
I flew my Radian at 800 foot, but beyond that, I didn't feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I think it's worth pointing out that just seeing a spec is perhaps beyond visual line of sight, because it doesn't just say visual line of sight when you read a little bit further. It's such so that you can avoid collisions and things. So it's a little bit more than just being able to see it, to be able to see.
Yeah, you've got to be avoiding.
Maintain orientation and control. So it is a little bit more than that.
Well, and as David points out, I'm sure a lot of members will have been in that situation where they're struggling, as you said, Andy, to orientate the model or whatever, and you should be giving up before that point. You should be bringing the model down so that it's safe and comfortable. Okay, but relatively short one there, Paul.
No, that's great. It actually reminds me of some thermal flying at Buckminster a couple of years ago, and again, similar situation. You've got a booming thermal. You're going up very rapidly and loving the lift, and it goes from that point of, oh, this is brilliant, into sheer terror as the thing starts to disappear quite rapidly.
Yes.
And yes, the controlled descent with your air brakes open until you can comfortably see your model.
Yes,
very well.
One of my clubs was very keen on aero towing back in the day, and we used to do a lot with 60-pound Watt 4s. They would tow quite a big glider, but of course a Watt 4 gets very small very quick, and the glider guy's doing, no, this is fine, I can see my glider, but your little tiny waffle. So, yeah, people, we don't realise how high we can fly at times.
No. Okay. Right. Final question of the evening we've got. See, we're at what, an hour and 15, and we said we'd try and keep to the hour. And this one comes from Peter Johnson. And again, this is for Andy as well as the rest of the panel. In your COVID-19 guidance dated the 6th of March, you say that model flying sites will not be subject to gathering limits from the 29th of March. Could you clarify this, please? I think we will still be restricted to the rule of 6 outdoors and social distancing until at least the 17th of May.
Yes, actually we will be working on a new press release tomorrow, which we'll also email to everybody. The government roadmap was clear that for organised outdoor sports that gathering limits wouldn't apply. So I think our statement said may not apply. We tend not to be definite until we see the actual regulations that are in place, which they've been very kind, and they've actually released them today. Normally it's sort of 10:30 on a Friday night, so we have to spend the Saturday deciphering them all. So I'm just going to share screen again. Because it's probably easier to say a picture paints 1,000 words. I don't know if you can see that, but I've had the first read through of the statutory instrument, and I'll be doing a bit more tomorrow. And you can see there, participation in gatherings outdoors, and it says no person may participate in a gathering in the step 1 area, which is the whole of England, that consists of more than 6 people. But if you look at subparagraph 2, it says it does not apply if any of the exceptions set out in paragraph 4 or 6 apply, and 6 is bigger because when we scroll down to 6 in the actual regulation, that there are a few exceptions there for outdoor sports and outdoor activities. So if you're participating in an outdoor sports gathering, so you're at a model flying club, and for exception 3, if it's for a relevant outdoor activity, and B, there is the important bit, the gathering organizer takes the required precautions in relation to the gathering, i.e. follow the guidance from your national governing body, the Bmfa. This relates specifically to club flying, by the way, and not just a couple of you gathering together at a local park where you can fly. So this is club flying sites. You need to be following our 6 steps to COVID secure. So at a club site, if you're following that, you're not restricted to 6 on site, and the gathering restrictions don't apply, but you do need to be operating in a COVID secure manner. But we will, as I say, I'll be working with Ian, Dave and Paul and Manny. We tend to have a bit of an online meeting whenever these restrictions change, so we can put something out that hopefully is clear and that everybody understands. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question. And let's pray for good weather on Monday.
Thank you very much for that, Andy, and thank you for all the panelists that have come along tonight and given their expert time and answers to the questions. But most importantly, thank you to everybody that has attended this evening. We hope it's been as enjoyable as the first one. We hope it's been very informative, answered many of your questions that you submitted, which is very kind of you to do so, and we hope you can join us for part 3 once we've got a date set, and hopefully we'll all be flying by then and enjoying some glorious weather and getting all of those planes that have been built waiting to be made and all out. So thank you.